Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Glasgow Motorway Archive podcast with John and Stewart. So this episode we're going to be revisiting a topic that we have spoken about before, and it's to do with road schemes that are currently under construction or planned for the future. So we'll be talking a bit about the city deal stuff that goes on, and we're also going to be talking about some of the trunk road schemes. So, Stuart, when was the last time we spoke about this? I think it was well over a year ago.
Yeah, I think so. We did cover City Deal back in 2020. I think we've spoken about the A9 upgrades as part of the Duncan Special podcast within the A9 a few months ago.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good way to kick off 2021 with a revisit, because some of these schemes are getting a wee bit more publicity, particularly City Deal. Mm-hmm. And I know people will be interested in that, so it should be good to talk about that. How are you, by the way? It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm okay. Just it's all very boring. You know, we're all stuck in, but you know that's what we have to do.
And can you believe that this is us now into the third year of the podcasts for the Glasgow Motorway Archive? It's season 3.
Of course it is, isn't it? And it's doing so well, you know. So we are back to doing these about monthly, aren't we?
Yep, we are. We're back to one a month.
With everything that's going on, and we're very busy at the moment, so we're doing our best to bring this content to you. But so this will be a good roundup, I think, of everything that's going on. Oh, yeah. It has been a difficult year throughout 2020, particularly for construction, because things like that were set back. But we'll do our best to bring you updates on things that are happening.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as you've said many times, I mean, it's primarily historic podcast. We talk about the things from the past, but it's nice to pepper in some modern and future schemes now and again, just to keep it all interesting.
I'm sure there might be some people listening going, why aren't they talking about Glasgow? But don't worry, we've got some great stuff lined up.
Yeah, we have. So you're going to kick us off then with some trunk road stuff.
Well, let's talk about the A9 first. Okay, so just to give everyone here an idea that the Scottish Government made the commitment to dual the entire A9 between Perth and Inverness. Now, at the moment, there are some sections of dual carriageway, but it's intermittent. Mm-hmm. So since doing this, there's one scheme that's actually completed, which is Kincraig to Dalrady, which is quite a long section, and there's one currently under construction at the southern end near Perth, the Lunkety scheme. Which actually, now we've both seen this, haven't we? Back before we all got locked in our houses, when we were coming back that way, we went and seen it, and this joins up two sections of dual carriageway. Yeah. So this was originally scheduled to open now. Mm-hmm. But because of coronavirus last year, the construction sites were all set down, and it's Balfour Beatty who are building this one.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Famous contractor.
Yeah, very well known. Yeah.
And they had to be put on hold for a while. So this has been pushed back slightly. It's not going to be for probably the summer now until it's actually going to open. But that's another long section of dual carriageway. So that's being built. But something, you know, we do get asked about things outside of Glasgow occasionally, and people certainly come to me, you know, because apparently I'm an oracle of these things, even because I work in the industry, but I do not work on the A9, is what are the next sections to be done? Mm-hmm. So what Transport Scotland have done with this project is they have divvied it up into different sections along the A9 route. And one of the big bits of news that have come out whenever you're doing these things, you get objectors, is the most recent scheme up near Crewben Moor. Mm-hmm. They've managed to get rid of some of the objectors. Okay.
Now, for my benefit, Crewben Moor, where is that in terms of the whole Perth to Inverness line? Is it middle, top, bottom?
It's in the middle. It's in the middle. It's north of the Glengarry section, where you have the two very long sections of dual carriageway, where the carriageways are separated. It's north of there. So there are sections of dual carriageway there. So there's a long section. It's Crewben Moor to the bit that goes up towards Kincraig, Dalrady. So again, it kind of joins up these sections of dual carriageway, and they've just cleared the objectors from there. Good. Now, there are some controversial areas on the A9 that, you know, there are a lot of people who are concerned about where the route's going, particularly around Pass of Burnham, Killiecrankie and these areas. So there's still a lot of work to be done. These things have still happened behind the scenes despite coronavirus.
Yeah. I mean, this is a very ambitious project.
Massive.
It's a massive project, probably the biggest single road scheme that will have been undertaken in Scotland for a while. Okay, Queensferry Crossing, big value.
It's bigger than Aberdeen bypass.
Yeah. So this will certainly be the longest one since the A74 was being upgraded to motorway in the 1990s, I would say. Some background for those who are maybe not so familiar with the A9, and who may not have listened to the A9 podcasts a few months ago. The A9 is a road that was completely rebuilt in the late 70s and early 80s, and it was given a modern alignment at that time. But because of traffic flows at that time, it was decided that the majority of the route would be built to single carriageway standards.
With clear, visual sight
Yes.
lines that you could
For
overtake.
overtaking. But as traffic has increased and driver frustration became a problem, the safety record of the roads suffered quite a bit. And there were a number of very high-profile accidents over the years that ultimately led
The
to calls
killer
for action.
road,
Yeah,
as they called
exactly. So the issue on that road isn't so much engineering issues or geometric or visual issues or anything like that. It's really about driver frustration because people get stuck in long convoys of vehicles behind lorries and trucks and buses and things, itching to overtake. And then eventually when they do, it's at the wrong time. And
they
an
don't
accident
realise,
happens.
of course, and the closing speeds that were going on.
Yeah.
Now they did, Stewart, a number of years ago now, they did put average speed cameras on the A9, and that has actually had quite a positive effect in reducing accidents.
Yes, and I know they increased the speed limit for HGVs to 50 miles an hour as well, didn't they?
Because on single carriageways, if you have a copy of your highway code, which I'm sure everyone has, the lorries, HGVs, are limited to 40 miles an hour single carriageway, but no, they've upped it to 50 on the A9.
Yeah.
So when you see those signs in the A9 that's saying 50 mile an hour trial limit, that's for the HGVs. It doesn't apply to cars.
Okay.
So your same national speed limits apply.
Yeah, so I mean, the Scottish Government decided that they would upgrade it to dual carriageway.
Based mostly on safety reasons.
For safety reasons, primarily, yeah. Not for capacity reasons or anything like that.
It doesn't have a massive a flow of traffic. It's certainly at the southern end. I mean, that section that's being constructed just now will have a huge benefit going there. So what... Still haven't answered this question, is what's going to happen next, and we don't know. I mean, the best thing to look at is that these processors, once they've got rid of objectors on these things, they can go towards what they call the draft orders for the road. They eventually become made orders, which gives the road a kind of a legal foundation to actually be built. Now, a lot of these schemes, they've already selected the corridors, they've already done the stage 3 design on these, so they're more or less ready to go. So it's just a legal thing behind the background. Then it gets tendered out to contractors.
Of course, there could also be a public inquiry requirement as well, depending if the statutory objectors. I think the process is if they can't eliminate all the objections, that it has to go to public inquiry.
That's right.
That's then heard by an expert on behalf of the Scottish Government. Will hear the case for and against, and make a decision or a recommendation on whether the road should go ahead or not.
But that's what the good news is they've managed to clear some of these objectors on this scheme up by Crubin Moore, so it won't have to go to public inquiry.
Well, that'll save at least a year to 2 years in time immediately, just by removing the requirement for that, because I know it can take a bit of time. So that's some good news then. So we should be hearing some news then possibly on what's next.
The best place to go, see if you want to find out the thing quicker, is Transport Scotland's website. Is if you go to the news section there, you can see the things that come out, and they keep you relatively up to date.
Now, I remember us talking on the A9 podcast about potential journey savings that the scheme might bring. There obviously there's a whole raft of safety improvements that we've already discussed, but in terms of journey time savings, was it something in like 30 to 40 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. About 30 minutes is what you'll save on that.
Let's be honest, anyone who's ever driven from Perth to Inverness, if you're not doing it at a leisurely pace in your own time because you don't need to be somewhere in a hurry, it can be fairly enjoyable because there's plenty of things you can look at and see. If, however, you're a trucker or a bus driver or just a person who has business in Inverness and you need to get to Inverness by a certain time, the A9 is not the most predictable road for you.
No, I mean, you can get stuck behind convoys, but doing anywhere 40, 50 miles an hour in sections, although...
Or less if there's farm traffic.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a road that's too bad for that kind of thing, and that's more of an A96 problem, which we'll touch on the A96 briefly, but no, you're absolutely right. Having then a dual carriageway, you've got the guaranteed overtaking, and cars can do 70 on that.
Yeah. Well, that'll be good to see that one develop. I know that there's a stated aim to have it complete within the next few years, so it'll be good to see again an ambitious target. It'll be interesting to see how that all pans out. Hopefully, coronavirus doesn't impact on the programme too much.
No, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. So, sticking with up north, we're going to talk a little bit about the A96. So, the background to this is the Scottish Government also made a commitment to dual the A96 from Inverness to Aberdeen. It's the main road, and this road goes from Inverness to Aberdeen, passes by Nairn, Forres, Elgin, Keith, Huntly, Inverurie, all these places. It doesn't have many new dual carriageway sections. Over towards it between Inverurie and Aberdeen, yes, that was upgraded in the 1990s. So they've been busy working away on designs in the background for these areas. Now, the part that's furthest forward is the Inverness to Nairn, which includes a Nairn bypass, and this is going to be dual carriageway expressway standard. Okay.
Yep.
That actually did go to public inquiry,
Okay.
and we're still waiting the results of that public inquiry.
Right.
Once that comes back, then they can go ahead and do the orders for the scheme.
Assuming it's given the go ahead.
Assuming it's given the go ahead. Yeah, with these things.
I am familiar with that scheme because I know that has developed over a few years. I mean, that was policy even before the rest of the A96 was announced to be dualled, because it's a horrifically busy section of road.
Yeah.
Even just off away from the summer peak, it can be a busy section of road, particularly for traffic heading from there to Inverness and the peaks.
Nairn's always been a dormitory for Inverness, and people will live there and commute between these ones. And actually, over on the eastern side, you've got the same issue. House prices in Aberdeen have increased a lot. People now living out in these other towns, Huntly, Keith, Elgin, and they're commuting along this road. Now, it's one thing that's been said, and one of the arguments against dualling of the A96 has been not many people make a journey between directly Inverness and Aberdeen.
Yeah.
It's most people making journeys from and in between these towns. It actually in areas has higher traffic flows than the A9.
See, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, the A96 is a road that I've only driven end to end once, and you were there. It's interesting. There was busy bits, there were quieter bits, there were very rural bits. It was an interesting road.
And had a lack of bypasses as well in some areas.
And I was going to ask you that question. Do many people make the journey from Aberdeen to Inverness in one go? I mean, it's 103 miles or something like that?
Just about 100 miles, you're right, good guess. The thing is, I don't have any data here, really, to say that. It's not something I done. I mean, I'm from that part of the world, and I stayed near Elgin, and I used to use it really to go from Elgin to Inverness or Elgin to Aberdeen, or between Elgin and Keith and these other places. Didn't know many people that would make that as a commute. Might be different for commercial traffic, of course.
Of course, you've got
particularly these towns. I mean, Elgin was terrible with traffic because it didn't have a bypass. Not just that, it had loads of roundabouts in it. It wasn't very nice. So if anything, the A96 dualling, rather than looking at the whole end-to-end thing, the bypasses are going to be a great thing.
They're going to be the biggest benefit from all of this, really, aren't they? The bypass into the towns like Inverurie. And I know there's been very keen interest from the locals there about the alignment of that bypass around Inverurie.
Yes, you're right. You've moved the subject there very conveniently, because that's what I was going to talk about. Is actually there's been some quite recent news is about where the A96 was going to go in relation to Inverurie. This particular section, just like the A9, is a section in its own right. So they've divvied up the whole route into sections. This section goes Inverurie to east of Huntly. So there were a few different route options they were looking at, with a bypass going to the south of Inverurie or going to the north. Okay, they've ultimately now decided on the southern route.
Okay.
And that was only quite recently. They've got all the maps up on Transport Scotland's website, so you can see exactly where it's going to go.
Okay.
This is a dual carriageway to expressway standard. No roundabouts, at-grade junctions, flyovers,
This
all
is
that
going to be
kind
a
of thing.
fast-moving piece of
Absolutely.
road. This road is designed clearly for people who are doing full-length journeys like hauliers
It
and
is,
things.
but they do have quite a lot of junctions on it for things. They are retaining the old A96 in areas to act as a local access road.
Ah, good.
I am not entirely sure if this will be of special road status. If it is expressway standard, it might be. Meaning it's restricted. It's basically a motorway all but in name.
Keeping the tractors and things away from it, really.
Exactly.
Is it? Yeah.
And it's ambitious. In areas there's a massive viaduct at Inveramsey that takes the road over the railway line, the road and the river. So it's
another fascinating one to watch.
It is,
really is.
Yeah. So if you go on the Transport Scotland website, they've got it all in the sections, and you can look at the alignments that have been chosen so far for the bits. It is just behind the A9, though. That's the thing. The A9 is ahead.
Now that eastern section that's dualled already. Now you said that was done in the 1990s.
Yeah,
what was the primary reason for that?
This is a smaller one. This was basically Aberdeen Airport is at Dice on the western side of Aberdeen. Inverurie was already a place that didn't have a bypass, and there was a lot of people commuting in that section there, so it was justified because of the traffic levels at the time. Now this was very much dualling on the cheap.
Right.
It was parallel dualling, and there was only one junction on it that was grade separated. The rest of it was roundabouts. It's quite a lot of roundabouts. As soon as you get up to speed on this, you're back at a roundabout.
Yeah.
So that section went in. Now, the bypass, the 90s bypass for Inverurie was single carriageway. And a lot of people have argued, why can't you just upgrade the existing Inverurie bypass? Because it's right close to the town, you see. They can't, because they don't have the room to do it. To accommodate the grade separated junction would require the demolition of over 30 properties.
Right, so that's never a realistic concept. Yeah.
When we look back at the construction of things in Glasgow, it was different with the comprehensive redevelopment. That kind of thinking isn't quite there anymore with these things, so they've decided to take it on a different alignment.
Which makes sense when you've got a lot of empty space around the town. You've got plenty of space where you can go north or south there. You're not going to demolish 30 properties if you can go half a mile further south and not have to.
It's agricultural land, really, in these places. Yeah, there are some areas of kind of special environmental interest, using that phrase, but, the road kind of goes around these.
So, thinking about it then, we said there's about 100 miles of this route that's going to be dualled. Same with the A9, it's about 100 miles from Perth to Inverness as well, although obviously there's about a third of it dualled already. Is that a fair amount?
Do you know what? We'll say third once this section is done down there.
So, you could say there's going to be about 60 miles still to be done there. So we've got 160 odd miles of dual carriageway in preparation.
And not just, this isn't your 90s dual carriageway. Like I said, it's not A90 upgrades where this is expressway type stuff. A lot of it offline in area. The A96 is particularly ambitious in the fact, if you look at the Elgin section between Nairn and Fochabus, which incorporates Elgin, most of it's offline.
So if people trying to get an idea of what that kind of road looks like, I think a good example would be the A14.
A14, the recent upgrades that you've got there. So dual 2-lane, grade separated junctions. There won't be hard shoulders and stuff like that.
But it's to expressway standards. So that's a good one. Go and have a look on Street View. We don't. It's not really a type of road we have built to any great extent here. The Clydeside Expressway, the East Kilbride Expressway, but they're old-fashioned stuff.
Yeah, there is an in-between one, I suppose, the Edinburgh City Bypass, we looked at one of those things, but we'll come on to that, won't we? So, that's all I've got to say on the A96 at the moment. So keep an eye on the news. There will be some announcements for these things coming out.
The only one I was going to mention in the north of the country, I was doing a bit of reading on the A82, and there's obviously been a lot of discussion over the years about how that could be upgraded, and I know they're already looking at Tarbert to Inverarran. That's the really narrow stretch that runs tight to Loch Lomond.
Oh, yeah. Is that when there's a tourist bus coming the other way and you feel your life's in your hands?
So I know they're looking at improvements there, and I think the stated alignment was published a few years ago now for that, and basically it's an online upgrade, widening of the existing road, provision of footways and cycleways, and I think in some locations actually some structures over the loch as well. Remember Pulpit Rock? That was done 5-6 years ago.
Fantastic.
Well, there might be one or two more structures like that.
So it's one of these things that kind of sections might be built out into the loch itself rather than carving in. Because one of the things when you drive along that section of road is it's hard up against the rock, and it's to me it'd be very difficult.
There's a lot of ecological considerations in that part of the world as well, with forestry and
of course
and bats and all sorts of species in there that you just wouldn't possibly get away with ploughing a new road through
scheme
a new line.
blockers. Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't want to take that inland and have all that trouble to go with it. So I know that's coming down the line. I think there's other improvements as well. And the one we didn't mention, where the A82 meets the A9 at Inverness, there's a big scheme up there as well, isn't there?
There's a roundabout here. This is north of Raigmore Roundabout. So you're between Raigmore and the Keswick Bridge, there's Longman Roundabout. Now, I think Duncan tells us Longman Roundabout was a new feature. It was actually added in at some point. This is known as the Sheriffhall of the North.
Yeah.
It's a horrendous roundabout. And it's one of these ones where they added traffic lights to it and it made it worse.
Okay.
And it's where the 82 comes in, but also serves a stadium as well. So they have now agreed on a design for this. It's going to be a flyover that goes on there. So that's getting a flyover. So that's all been done. They've agreed on that. So I don't know what the status in terms of public inquiry or where it's going to construction or if the orders are there. But that's getting grade separated.
Good.
So it's another annoying junction removed.
Yeah. Well, we mentioned the city bypass a minute ago, and you mentioned Sheriffhall.
Yeah.
That conveniently takes us on to Sheriffhall.
It does. So we had a City Bypass podcast, and we spoke about the only kind of at-grade junction on the City Bypass is Sheriffhall Roundabout.
Yep.
The reason why this wasn't given a flyover was because of the geological fault in the area, and the kind of there was a colliery there as well.
Yeah, very expensive to treat.
And it was, but they always considered that it would be grade separated at some point if these issues could be addressed.
Yep.
So back to the present, they decided on a design for this, and it was a flyover. They've decided for Sheriffhall Roundabout,
Okay.
and this was put under review a year ago. So we're just waiting to see the results of that review to see if that still goes ahead. But I know that the government quite committed to doing it. It's something that people really want to see done. I think there's some political pressure there as well.
I think so. Again, if you want to keep traffic out of Edinburgh, central Edinburgh, then really you need a good free-flowing bypass to keep that, that route viable. So I would imagine that Sheriffhall being grade separated would be high on the list.
There are some valid concerns about this scheme in the fact that Sheriffhall is a problem spot at the moment for traffic backing up. Wouldn't this just move the problem to Old Craighall?
Well, wasn't there some improvements there a couple of years ago to add an additional lane and traffic signals?
Well, that's what they put signals in to try and help, and I'm not sure if that was an anticipation or advance of that.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I know that is a busy junction. I remember East Lothian Council mooted an idea of providing a filter lane, a dedicated link, didn't they, from the northbound A1 to the westbound City Bypass.
Yeah, so you could just
straight
fly.
round. You wouldn't have to use the roundabout, which would make sense.
But the only thing is, getting from the City Bypass to the A1 southbound is your problem.
Yeah.
You would need something like the High Loop at Baillieston, so you need a loop going over the whole
right
junction.
Over the top. So that would be
amazing, though.
And from an engineering point of view, it's certainly at the other end, at the Hermiston Gate end. Yeah, I mean that's very busy as well. It'll be interesting to see how it all comes together.
Yes, exactly.
I imagine, and I think I've read before, that one of the problems with the City Bypass is it's used for sort of local journeys as well, junction hopping.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there could be some benefit there. And as the sprawl of Edinburgh continues ever south,
my friend at Fairhurst says to me that he gets very annoyed when you call it a bypass because it shouldn't be a bypass, but it's turned into a kind of a commuter road, kind of like a distributor road rather than a straight bypass. It's almost too useful.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Well, I'm just Sheriffhall. We'll see. We'll go from there.
Yeah, so. It's certainly interesting. In terms of trunk road schemes, that's more or less all of the main ones that's kind of on the go at the minute.
Well, there's the A77 has got the Maybole.
At Maybole.
That's actually under construction at the moment.
Yep.
We spoke about Dalry Bypass. That's obviously open. The section at the Den has opened as well.
It's also A77.
Now at Beath, there's an existing bypass at Beath, but it has some nasty little junctions on it, and it's quite close. So they're actually going to be building a new bypass at Beath and pulling it out a little bit.
Right.
So bringing that up to standard, and that's actually meant to start this year.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Well, the advanced works are, I believe, like the fencing and the clearance are meant to start this year.
Okay.
For that one.
Interesting.
So it's getting ahead.
Be good to see. And I know Maybole is a scheme on the A77 that had been on the books for a number of years. Strathclyde Regional Council had plans for that many, many years ago.
I wonder if Girvan will get the same treatment.
I wonder if Girvan will get something eventually. Yeah, it would make sense.
Ports are down there.
It's an important route to the ports. Yeah, as you say. So that'll be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah.
And obviously we'll keep you up to date with any other new ones that maybe get announced or come forward. We know that the Scottish Government, Transport Scotland, has a strategic projects review. At the moment, they review them every so many years, every 10 years or so. And I think that the findings of that are eagerly anticipated. So it'll be interesting when that gets published.
See what's being taken forward.
Yeah, definitely. So that's a good point then, I think, to switch to local authority routes then, isn't it? And the upgrades that some of the councils are looking to take forward. And let's be honest, local authorities and road building has not really been a thing in Scotland for a few years. There's been a dry spell for that kind of stuff for at least the last 20 years or so.
Yeah, I mean, if only there was a huge lump of cash available.
Yeah, exactly. So that very thing happened with the creation of the city region deals that were announced a few years ago. Now, initially these were agreements between the local authorities in Scotland and the UK government. The Scottish Government later got involved as well and agreed to match any money being put in by the UK Government. And Glasgow was the first area in Scotland that signed up to this. Since then, there's been a number of others in the Borders and the Highlands and Fife and various places. Even Ayrshire, I think, has got one as well. And what that does is it allows local authorities to take forward schemes that have local benefit. So they're not necessarily strategic routes, but they'll have local or regional benefits that make them justifiable, and obviously they don't have the money on their own to take them forward. So there's a number in Glasgow that we're going to talk about first. And then I know there's a couple others dotted about the country as well, John, that you're going to fill us in on. And I'm going to talk
about Lanarkshire.
About Lanarkshire. South Lanarkshire in particular, they were pretty far advanced with their proposals because they had road schemes that they had been, aspired to construct.
Just kind of shovel-ready things they had in a drawer for if the money ever came
for years
available.
and years. So when City Deal came along, they were more or less sitting ready. They were just waiting on money to allow them to move forward. And that meant that the Cathkin Relief Road, that basically ties in the end of the Cathkin bypass to Mill Street in Rutherglen. Was a scheme that had been designed by Scott Wilson Kirkpatrick way back in the 1970s for Rutherglen Borough Council. It had been sitting there all those years. Eventually that went ahead, so that's complete. I mean, that opened 3 years ago.
Yeah, I remember you took me to that on my birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
I was like blindfolded in the car. Yeah. It's a surprise. There we go, Cathkin bypass.
So what that did was provide a nice fast link between the Cathkin bypass and the A749 coming down from East Kilbride.
Yeah.
Linking in with Mill Street, which is the dualled road that runs all the way down the western extremities of Rutherglen, down past Shawfield Stadium and joins with the M74 at Polmadie.
Yeah.
So that was all done. So that took a lot of traffic away from the sort of Burnside, Fernhill kind of area. Okay, so that's all done. That's all complete. So go and see that one if you get a chance.
Yep.
The other one that they had pretty close to being shovel ready was the dualling of Greenhills Road and the A726.
This is East Kilbride, isn't it? So
yes.
This is the south of East Kilbride.
Yes.
Right.
So there's big plans to build hundreds or thousands of new houses to the south of East Kilbride. And Greenhills Road, which was built, I believe, in the late 70s, early 80s as part of the expansion of the East Kilbride New Town, was left in such a way that parts of it could be dualled without much trouble. So now that they've considered expanding it, and with the industrial units and estates that are up there as well, they decided to take forward the dualling of that, and that's already on the ground. And I think it's another scheme that probably should just have been about finished, but obviously was held up by the coronavirus.
I don't know how long construction was stopped. I think it was over a month, wasn't it?
Oh, it was 3-4 months for some of the worst cases. So they did lose quite a bit of time. So basically what that's doing is, anybody who's familiar with East Kilbride, you'll know as you travel east on the A726, once you pass the sort of final grade separated junction there, it goes down to single carriageway where it passes the park. So they're dualling about 3/4 of a mile from there to the junction with Greenhills Road as you head towards Straven, and then about a mile of Greenhills Road, I think, as you head west from there. So that's all going to be upgraded. So that'll provide some improvements, and they're putting in active travel, infrastructure there as well.
NMU stuff. It's very important now because there's a big drive for this type of thing. So you need to think about that too with the schemes. In fairness, it's a good thing because it does justify the schemes just as much.
Nice wide footways, cycleways, all these sorts of things.
Yeah, and we get, of course, a dual carriageway. So that's under construction at the moment.
It is.
When did you say that was due to be completed?
Well,
based on the
last information I read, I reckon probably summer this year. They'll be looking to have most of that complete, so summer, autumn sort of time. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, traffic is already using the new carriageway, and I believe they're currently rebuilding the old existing carriageway because this has been parallel dualling. Just slapping a new carriageway down immediately.
It's one of these things that's quite good. They didn't have to knock many properties down for this, did
they?
No,
not at all.
Because the space was already there.
Yeah. No demolition, anything like that. Just basically, adding a bit of road in. Now, the other one that South Lanarkshire Council had proposed was the dualling of Stewartfield Way. Now, this was part of the northwest bypass of East Kilbride that was built in 1990 or thereabouts. And again, it was left wide enough to dual it. At the time, Strathclyde Regional Council didn't have enough money to dual it there and then. So they said, well, we'll come back to it at some point down the line. That's what South Lanarkshire Council are now doing. Unfortunately, several hundred houses have been built alongside that road since that time, and some of the locals are not too enamoured with the idea of a dual carriageway.
There was a councillor there that wasn't keen on it. Personally, I mean, we've driven down Stewartfield Way a few times, and it definitely needs it. East Kilbride's one of these situations where the actual roads are quite good through the town,
Yeah.
but they're urban roads that are
Yeah.
good through the town. So it's this thing: does it really need a bypass? I think definitely it does. But Stewartfield Way, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think there's maybe just a bit too much controversy there for that one to go ahead. It'll be interesting to see. It's already been delayed. While
it would tie in quite nicely, though, from the Glasgow Southern Orbital.
Yeah.
What's the name of the junction?
Phillips Hill.
And
Yeah.
if it went through there, you've got this
right across to Nerston.
right across the Inverness,
Yep.
and tidy all that up because they're awful.
Bypass
now, those
Worleys
junctions.
completely.
And then just go straight onto the East Kilbride Expressway, and you would have
Yeah.
that lovely, nice free-flowing ring.
It
there,
almost is an obvious line on a map. It's a gap.
Mm.
If you look at a gap, if you want to see any good gaps in road systems or perceived gaps in road systems, look at the A725 from Nerston round to the A726 at Phillips Hill, and you think, yeah, that could be a good obvious line to join those two lines up and take all the traffic out of East Kilbride. But yeah, there's other issues there with people living locally. Although I don't see why they couldn't push the road half a mile north.
Yeah.
And take it into some of the agricultural land that surrounds East Kilbride. I mean, South Lanarkshire had plans for years, or pushed for years, to have a connection to the M73 between Nerston and Maryville.
Extend the 73 south and stuff. Well, we've spoken about that. That would be quite something.
Mm-hmm. So so these things are being proposed.
So Stuart, well, there hasn't been much news on it, has there?
No.
I think it's been quietly shelved.
Yeah,
maybe,
although they were
don't
still
know.
undertaking public information exercises and things fairly recently. There was a 3D fly-through produced, I think, to try and show people that, look, this isn't
I've
going to
not
be
seen that. That would be quite good to see.
So that's worth looking up. If you go to South Lanarkshire Council's website, all that information's on there. Moving across to the other Lanarkshire, North Lanarkshire, they also have big plans. In fact, they've got about £200 million worth of roads proposals.
Some of these are very ambitious.
Yep.
So I'll take a back seat here and let you inform us.
Yeah. So anybody who's familiar with the A723 as a road will know that that's one of the main links between South and North Lanarkshire. Runs from Straven all the way down through Hamilton, across to Motherwell, and all the way up to the M8 at Chapel Hall. Okay. Now that's a single carriageway route between Junction 6 of the M74 and Junction 6A of the M8. Okay. Part of it, between Carfin and Hollytown, was built in the early 1990s by Strathclyde Region. That was a section of new road that was provided to improve connections to the A8, as it was at that time, and the new Eurocentral park that they were building, okay, at that same point. So what they've decided now, because the huge empty Ravenscraig site, sitting just east of Motherwell, is there, and is very poorly connected to the motorway system, as a way to try and drive investment in that site, they've decided they're going to improve the roads connections. And there's about 3 distinct parts to this. Okay. So basically the ambition is they're going to dual the A723 from the M74 Junction 6 all the way up to the M8 at Chapel Hall. Now, they're going to do that by incorporating, excuse me, the Airballs Road section of dual carriageway in Motherwell that already exists and has existed since the late 60s. They're going to finish the small section, 300-yard section at the bottom of the hill at Strathclyde Park that's not been done. And they're then going to build a new southern access to Ravenscraig. So if you're familiar with the Civic Centre in Motherwell, so where Airballs Road meets Windmill Hill Street, they're going to continue a dual carriageway straight through there, where the Ford garage is at the moment, right across the West Coast Main Line, or under the West Coast Main Line, and into the Ravenscraig site, and they're going to build a short stretch of dual carriageway that will tie into the existing dual carriageway within that site.
That's right. So if you look at the Ravenscraig site, you can just looking at Google, it's already dualled. Well, most of it is.
Yeah.
But the roundabouts there have a lot of ghost arms on them, as in they built these kind of stubs on them to be extended.
Absolutely.
So, it was always envisaged that these kind of things would happen.
And people often ask why the dual carriageway in Ravenscraig stops, but just before the end, why does it not continue all the way to Craignuke Street? At the far end, at the E721. And the simple fact is it was always intended that an arm would branch off and the dual carriageway would head straight for the top of Airballs Road. So that's why. So that'll finish that bit. Now the third scheme that ties into this takes the existing A723 from the top of Ravenscraig where it meets Carfin, or where it's at Carfin, and then we'll take it all the way from there up to the motorway at the M8 at Eurocentral. So they're going to dual that. So anybody who's familiar with the road knows that there's a Lidl supermarket and a Tesco Express at Carfin. It then goes fairly rural feeling, actually, where it goes...
There's a wooden arch bridge on it. I mean, it's a road I use a lot, to be honest with you. And
past the crematorium.
Be busy at peak time.
Yeah, very busy at peak time. And then from there up past your centre.
Now, at the crematorium, they produce a kind of gyratory there, and they've made that in such a way that ties in with the duelling. There's also a bridge with a spare span.
Yeah, that's right. They built a new bridge under the railway on the main Glasgow to Edinburgh via Shorts line back in 2015 to allow for the new carriageway to be slotted through there, all done as advanced works. So that's all sitting there all ready to go. Now, these three schemes are all part of what North Lanarkshire Council are referring to as their Pan-Lanarkshire Corridor. Because it's something that was recognised even by the designers of the Greater Glasgow Transportation Study 50, 60 years ago, was that north to south connections between North and Central Lanarkshire are very poor. If you want to go from Motherwell to Airdrie or Motherwell to Cumbernauld, those connections are actually quite poor. They're all very convoluted. You have to go various ways to get there. There's no direct routes.
Yeah, if you want, I mean, you could use motorways, but you're going the other way to go.
Yeah, you're heading
them.
away west to then go north and back east on yourself, So the council recognise that, and as I say, it's a long-held, problem. They've recognised it for years. So what they're proposing now is that from the M8 at Chapel Hall up to the M80 at Auchenkillens, people familiar with the A73 will know that there's a good stretch of dual carriageway right at the Cumbernauld end, right at the top,
at the north,
from Stand to the M80. So what the council are going to do is they're going to provide what they're calling an East Airdrie Link Road, and that will take a new A73 from the M8 all the way up to the M80, and it will run to the east of Airdrie. Okay, it will run east of Airdrie. Thinking of, putting it into a sort of a context for people who might be familiar with the area, it will run between Airdrie and Plains on the A89.
So where will this branch off from? Would it be Newhouse?
This is still to be discussed. So basically, what they would like is they would like it to tie in with the top of this new dual A723. Okay, so at Bowness Road, where you cross over the M8 at the moment, you'll either have one or two options. Either the road will go over that bridge on the motorway and then use Lancaster Avenue, okay, which is the road that skirts around the south and east of Chapel Hall before joining the A73. Okay, it will either go around there or they'll build a new section that will run east of Calder Bank and then northwest of Chapel Hall, and then run east of Eardrie from there. There's still a lot of corridor studies.
You know what? So this is actually quite a distance. This, and you're saying offline. This is big for a council scheme. Now, what kind of road are we talking about here? Is this single or dual or 2+1? Or?
Initially, it was stated that it would be a single carriageway route. However, I've noticed some discussions recently where the council have asked their consultants to look into the potential of dualling it. So you would then have a dual carriageway link from the M80 all the way to the M74. Via those sections in the south. As you know, when you're building new roads offline, it is often cheaper, to provide a dual carriageway, because you're doing all your drainage and your earthworks from scratch. You do anyway. Yeah. So for the sake of including just a wee bit more, up front, you can probably provide a dual carriageway for not a lot more money. So I think that's still being looked at the moment. Now, I must admit, I didn't think this was going to fly. Okay,
but why? It's very justified. I mean, at the moment, the 73 goes through Eardrie.
Yeah, it runs through Eardrie, runs through Chapel Hall.
It's very urban.
Yeah, and it's very busy. And I was kind of like, okay, I don't know, maybe it won't happen. Maybe it's just one of these pipe dreams that will sit on the books for years and years, never happen. But crucially, before Christmas, NHS Lanarkshire announced that they are going to relocate Monklands Hospital to the Western Moffat site, which again sits between Eardrie and Plains. Now, they had been looking at 3 sites across Lanarkshire, and this one has come out on top. Now, a key component of the delivery of that hospital is access from the East Airdrie Link Road. Okay, so suddenly this road becomes an important part of a much bigger thing, because they're going to build this hospital basically on this remote site to the east of Eardrie, and if they're going to improve access from the south, from the north, this road is it. Okay.
Well, yeah, this is for access for emergency vehicles and things like that. It makes all the difference.
Just for people getting to the hospital, and for public transport access and all these things. So suddenly that road became a key component of that scheme, that hospital scheme. Okay. And I think that has made the construction of it much more likely.
So are there plans for I mean, in terms of somebody wanting to look this up, because this is a big one, Stuart. This is big. And are there plans available for this that people can see?
Yeah, if you go onto the North Lanarkshire Council website and you go onto their city deal pages, schemes. You will get information on all these schemes because they have a few others as well, like redevelopment of Motherwell train station, and there's a bus access road and all sorts of things getting built there. So that they've got the A723 dualling and this East Airdrie Link Road. What I think eventually will happen is the A723 will be pushed away from Motherwell Town Centre, as it is at the moment, and will be diverted up Airballs Road. That would make sense. That becomes the primary route across, it's basically an eastern bypass of Motherwell. And then the A73, then gets its upgrade as part of this East Airdrie Link Road.
Yeah, no, it's something I'm looking forward to be honest with you. Is there any mention of timescales?
Yes, there is. So for the first section in the south, so the A723 improvements, the Ravenscraig section and the West Coast Mainline section are programmed for 2022-2023 for construction.
So a few years, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then from 23 to 24, it's going to be the dualling of the A723 north of Motherwell up to the M8 past the crematorium. And then finally 24-25 is the section immediately in front of Strathclyde Park. So where Airballs Road meets the current A723 junction as you head down to M74 Junction 6.
Yeah.
The East Airdrie Link Road is then programmed to come after that, sometime between 2025 and 2030. Now, I believe the construction of the hospital is programmed for something like 2026, 2027, something like that will be complete by then. So if you use that as a kind of time scale, that's probably a reasonable proposition.
Right, okay. So one to keep our eyes peeled out for.
They're probably the biggest city deal schemes that are in the west of Scotland at the moment. There's nothing really on this scale elsewhere.
No.
Although you've got a couple you're going to talk about in the east.
Well, yeah.
Oh, and the west. There's one at Renfrewshire as well.
There's the Renfrewshire. There's the Glasgow Airport improvements. The Glasgow Airport investment area, the improvements. So anyone who uses the roads like the A8 coming out of Renfrew and heading towards Bishopton and around the airport, they've noticed there's quite a lot of work going on around there. So the idea is that they're kind of upgrading the road there to accommodate a kind of an investment and business park.
Right.
So what they've also done is the existing, you know how there's the swing bridge that you get?
Oh, the Bascule Bridge.
The Bascule Bridge,
A8.
yeah. Immediately after that bridge, there is another bridge, which is a masonry arch bridge that goes over the cart.
Yeah.
I think it's the Black Cart. What they have constructed, and it is now in place, is the pedestrian footbridge next to this. This bridge was a nightmare if you're on a bike or walking because there was
just
hardly
no
any footway.
Right.
So they've put in a new footbridge there so people can get across.
Okay.
There is going to be another bridge that links up with the in Renfrew itself. It's called Westway.
Oh, the big industrial park.
Industrial
the old
site.
Babcock site. Yeah.
Yeah. So what they're doing there is they're actually building a mixed-use bridge across the cart there to link up with the roads behind into this business park. So this is all going ahead.
Westway is one of these awkward places to get to because back in the old days when I was involved with some of the refurbishment of the Glasgow sign gantries, it's one of the big warehouses down there where the gantries are taken for the refurbishment. Yeah. And it's one of these places where there's only one way in and one way out.
Porterfield Road in Renfrew,
exactly,
yes, and it's not that great from the motorway because you have to go through Renfrew.
Yeah.
With this thing, people would come off at Junction 29 at St James, go along the Barnesford Road, and they'd have access, to these kind of areas if they go around that way, or using the back way from Glasgow Airport.
Yeah. Now, crucially, there's one huge scheme down there that's going to tie in with all this, isn't there?
Well, that's right. So I believe it's at tender at the moment, but this is the Yoka Renfrew Bridge.
Yes.
So this is going to be an opening bridge, a low-level bridge, that's going to replace the ferry there between Yoka and Renfrew. So this is going to be another Clyde crossing, Stuart. We're going to have a whole other podcast, So this is great. So they've come up with the idea to do this. This is another City Deal one, but it's out to tender.
And it's like 70, 80 million pounds, something like that,
it's going to be really cool
Yeah.
to finally get access. Now, it's a single carriageway bridge, and it's for everything. It's for cyclists, pedestrians, and public transport and everything like that. But a road crossing there, that'll be so much easier to get to like Bray Head and so on, especially if you're north of the water.
I mean, people who live in Clydebank who want to go south of the river to Renfrew or anything like that, it's a real pain going via the Clyde Tunnel.
Do you know what the worst part is about it? Is public transport's a nightmare.
Yeah.
You've even got to get a train all the way into Central and then back out again. There are no trains either in Renfrew.
Yeah.
But for buses in particular, this will be be transformative for buses.
Yeah.
For people going between the two. Now there is another road in Renfrew. There is the Renfrew Northern Relief Road, which I want to build from just by the Baskill Bridge, which actually links up on the other side of this kind of. So if you're coming from if you're coming from the west, if you're coming from say Bishopton, you can, and to get to that, you can actually then take this new road.
So it's like a Renfrew Northern bypass.
Renfrew Northern bypass.
Which, funnily enough, takes us full circle, because back in the 50s and 60s, when they were looking at a Renfrew bypass, before they decided to move the airport, and that allowed the M8 to squeeze through that pocket, they always considered that they would need to go north of Renfrew. So there you go. So we've ended up back there anyway. Although the Erskine Expressway proposals from the GGTS study, I think they considered a Renfrew Northern bypass.
Yeah, that would have gone round the north and continued all the way through and tied back.
Interesting. So that's quite developed as well, all that. So that's going to them, yeah. So Glasgow City Deal is doing quite well at getting things moving.
It is, indeed. Well, particularly in the Glasgow area, there's not too much to say.
No, well, it's funding the Sighthill footbridge over the M8.
But no massive new roads.
No.
I mean, as you say, that's going on at the moment, the Sighthill footbridge.
Yeah, it's funding that. It's funding the avenues projects in the city as well. But yeah, as you see, no massive new road
nothing
building.
like what our friends at Lanarkshire are doing.
No, there is another smallish kind of scheme in the East Renfrewshire Council area approaching Barrhead from the M77. They're straightening out some of the road there. So anybody who knows that road that runs from the M77 to Barrhead and it skirts around all the reservoirs, they're straightening out a few sections of that as part of City Deal, as well as part of their M77 access project or whatever they're referring to it. So I don't know the status of that one. It's either on the ground already or just about to be.
That's the one I've only seen on Google Earth. I know that's currently going ahead because as you can see signs on the ground.
Yeah.
So
all right. So that's the west. What about
the east?
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about a road that I like, and this is the road that links the M9 and the M8. It goes from junction 4 on both motorways and links them up.
Oh,
and
yes.
This road is the A801.
It's a nightmare, that road.
Well, it's good in the south. It's good in the north. But there's a very dodgy bit in the middle, and this is known as the Avon Gorge. In fact, they often call the road the Avon Gorge Road. This road was actually built in the 1970s.
Right.
It was designed at the top end. It was between kind of Stirling County Council and then Lothian in the bottom.
Right.
And as the M8 and the M9 were constructed already in these sections, this road actually opened up to traffic in about 1972, 1973.
Right, okay.
So a little bit of history there for you. I'd looked into this. Now, when they built this road, sections of it, as you know, are very high quality.
Yeah.
There are dual carriageway sections in the south, 2+1 sections, and the bridges and the single carriageway sections have a spare span on them for dualling.
Yeah.
And you even get to one of the roundabouts on it, and you can see where they've done the clearance and the earthworks to allow it to proceed forward. But the difficult bit has always been in the Avon Gorge. Okay, this is a bit where the road actually dips down. It's quite twisty in areas. Not very nice. And in recent years, because you've got Grangemouth in the north, there's a lot of industry, a lot of commercial traffic that wants to go south, and this currently uses this road. So there have been calls for years, since the 70s, to get this upgraded. Of course, the expensive bit wasn't done. Now, if you Google anything to do with the upgrade of this road, you will see countless articles of politicians over the years calling for it. So recently, only a couple of years ago, they've agreed on the funding. So West Lothian Council and Falkirk Council are coming together to fund the road with money from the Scottish Government.
Right.
The local authorities ideally want the road trunked.
Oh, okay.
So, but I don't have any news on that. But they have managed to obtain some funding for this.
Okay, good. So that'll be a pretty mega viaduct right across that gorge.
It's a big scheme.
Yeah.
We're talking about over 100 million.
Single carriageway, dual carriageway?
Dual carriageway.
What is dual carriageway?
Looking to do dual carriageway in these sections from what I see. Now,
Yeah.
there are no plans that I've seen for this.
Yeah.
And this is where I'm left a little bit in the lurch. So an article from a couple of years ago said that it was meant to start in 2021. And then I read, an article quite recently that said due to the coronavirus and other things, this has now been pushed back.
Okay.
With some funding possibly being diverted elsewhere. So I don't know. It is happening.
Yeah.
It's just been
Unsure on the
pushed
timescales.
back. So don't worry. People haven't forgotten about the Avon Gorge upgrade.
So if anybody listening in the East has any awareness of this scheme that they've maybe seen recently in the local press or whatever, let us know. Drop us a line, let us know. Similarly with the Lanarkshire stuff and the Glasgow City Deal stuff, if you have seen any updates in your local area, then let us know. We would like to know about them. You have another East Coast.
It's Falkirk. Falkirk have for a number of years ago they done some upgrades with traffic lights at Cadges Bray, but they also the sections. It's funny enough we're talking about the A9 earlier, but the A9's also in Falkirk as well near the stadium. They want to do all these sections within the road there and provide some capacity improvements.
It's a busy place, Falkirk.
It is. It's actually got some fantastic roads in it.
Yeah.
I quite like driving around there, but which I've done. Before the lockdown. The
old Stirlingshire County certainly did push a lot of road schemes back in the 60s and 70s in that area. I often wonder if because Stirling was so difficult to develop, although it got its fair share of good roads as well when you think of the A9 underpass at Stirling train station. That's pretty good. But Falkirk did seem to get a lot of redevelopment in the 60s and 70s for roads, which, like Ayrshire that was discussed recently, was obviously all to do with a very proactive local authority soaking up all the money that was available,
Well, if the sun is shining, you make hay, don't
absolutely,
you?
Yeah.
So I have one more thing to discuss, and it's a local authority thing, and this is up in Perth.
Right.
So Perth have had this big road project that's already started in areas, and there's more to come, called Perth Transport Futures. So Google that. What they've done is, between Broxton Roundabout on the A9 and Inverness, there was a grade separated junction there. They've improved this junction. This is Perth, the council there. And they provided a link road in around that area to time with other developments. But the creme de la creme of this project is still to come. And this is the North Access Road that actually has a new junction on the A9 north of Inverness, a grade separated junction, with a bridge going over the River Tay. This provides a northern bypass for Perth.
Ah, okay.
Have you heard much about this scheme?
Now, I think I have seen the new junction on the A9. That much I have seen. Was that phase 1? I think that was phase 1, wasn't it?
That's phase 1.
And then I remember hearing something about a bridge over the Tay and a new road. Because again, isn't Perth another place that once considered a northern bypass?
Yes.
And, before the M90 and the the A9 came along.
It did, but I haven't seen plans for this one. Looking into it, in terms of what this relates to the current one. I mean, the one that they're proposing here, and there's actually a fly-through of it in like one of these kind of virtual models that they've done.
Yeah.
So this is a single carriageway, and it actually links up. It goes all the way past, Skooten Palaces.
Yeah. Is that the A93? Is that the road that passes
well,
there?
I know one of them's the A94.
A94.
Yes, you're right. A93 is the first one it passes. So
Right.
there's a roundabout on that, and then it finishes on the A94.
Right.
So people don't have to go through Perth anymore. They can actually
because it's
skip
also
past
a very
these.
busy town centre, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And Inverness is a particularly busy junction.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine there's actually a lot of people that are coming down the 93 and the 94 into Perth to go back up the A9.
Yeah. And
which is silly.
Yeah, that is
so this new bridge over the Tay will be fantastic,
Yeah.
So it does interact with the trunk road because, like I said, they're going to have to put a new junction in north of Inverness. That'll be interesting.
Now, Inverness, is it due to be grade separated as part of the A9 upgrade?
Eventually, yes. So what they want to do first is dual all the existing single carriageway sections on the A9.
Right.
But after that, there are a number of at-grade junctions that they want to have a look at because they want the whole thing all the way from Stirling.
Okay.
Because, of course, there's a part of the A9 between Stirling and Perth. It's already dualled.
Yeah.
Another dualling on the cheap thing, and it's got some nasty junctions on it. So that would include like Keir, the ones at Auchterarder and all these other ones, and then of course Broxton, and then Inverness. But we have spoken about that to death with the A9 podcast. So I'm not going to go over that too much. But yes, Stuart, they are going to look at grade separating them, but that's after the A9 sections are already completed. It's a single carriageway.
Yeah.
Who knows? There might be a whole change of policy by then, but that's what it's meant to be.
Interesting. Right, I think we'll make this an annual thing. We'll revisit all these schemes and give wee progress updates.
Hopefully we've got some new ones to talk about,
I mean, I know the intention is that as the new website expands, we'll include a lot of these local schemes. We'll do wee articles on them as well. And I know John's going to do some as well, aren't you, John?
Of course.
We'll get some of them written and we'll get them made available. So that'll give you some updates as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, on that note then, that actually is a convenient point to mention the new website, which went live just before the new year. It seems to be doing very well so far. We've had pretty positive feedback from a lot of people on it.
It's great. Check it out on your phone. It's brilliant on mobile.
A lot of new content going live regularly. I think we're in a position now where nearly everything that was on the old site is now live on the new one. Within the next couple of weeks, that will certainly be the case. And then as we go forward, we're going to expand considerably our routes section and also our unbuilt routes section. And then we'll be producing a few detailed articles on various points.
I know you're redoing the Mary Hill section at the moment.
Yes, Mary Hill, the article on the on the Mary Hill motorway is coming very soon. And then the intention is we'll have pages for all the unbuilt routes. These are just summaries. These are short summaries of where these routes were, where they're supposed to go, what they do, all that sort of thing. And then we then dig deep in the individual articles. So that's the intention.
So don't worry, you're not getting any less content on the new site. It's just that, imagine you have a page, it's actually now in 2. You just have the bare, like as you say, a kind of a quick summary page.
It's like the Wikipedia part.
A bit like Wikipedia, yeah. And then if you're going to go, you know what, I really want to know more about the M77 and the protests, then we'd have an M77 article for that. These things, it was just all over the place before.
And then it's all nicely embellished with galleries. So we're sharing many, many, many more photos than we ever have before, because in the archive we've got tens of thousands of photographs. So we're sharing more and more of these on the galleries, and they will develop over the next few years. And likewise, some of the material from the archive is being made available as well. Opening brochures can be viewed for the first time. Drawings can be viewed, plans,
PDFs.
So there's all these things as well now that were never there before. Also, these podcasts, they're available on the relevant pages as well, where you can listen into some of the specials. Some of our archive video footage and archive footage has been made available. Eventually, we're going to have route drive-throughs for all the main routes as well. So we've got a long-term plan. We've got a long-term plan, and I hope people stick with us as we develop that. As I say, it's all very much in development. It will grow over time. Don't look at it and think that's it. It's not going to get any better. It will,
No. And these things, Stuart, I just want to make this point. It's possible because of the interest that all of you guys, and I'm talking to the people who follow us on social media and listen to the podcast and donate to us, they make this possible.
They do. And we should mention our supporters, our formal supporters, Eastford Excavations, who've supported us this year. A big thank you to them, because they enabled us to digitise a considerable amount of material in the last half of last year. That's really appreciated. That allowed us to bring forward a lot of new stuff that will be on the website. Thanks to them.
Thank you, Eastford
Excavations. Andy and the team there, And likewise to anyone who purchased a calendar or a Kingston Bridge booklet from the website just before Christmas as well. Thank you. That will go a long way to ensure we continue to operate and continue to be online, because these things are expensive. It's expensive to be online. We're not funded by some public body or anything like that. It's all our own money, our own resources.
It's a lot, just to keep it would surprise you in terms of actually, the licensing for a lot of the software and everything that we use, and keeping the website up is a lot per month.
It is indeed. Yeah.
Put it this way, if it was coming off your bank account as a direct debit, you would feel.
You'd feel the pinch. Yeah, exactly. So thank you to everybody for that. So stick with us on all that. And there are a number of developments coming up. And in terms of the podcast for this year, we do have a good few big plans.
We've got some great things lined up. We've got a couple of guests. We're going to have Duncan coming back to talk to us about the A1 at some point, and I think later in the year A96.
Yes, that's right.
So more things not about Glasgow. We're also going to have, hopefully, a special guest from down south up as well. Because of technology being quite well, we can bring these podcasts really well over the internet now, so we don't need to be near people. Exactly. Which is good.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. I'm sure you'll enjoy what we've got lined up for the year ahead. And as always, you can get a daily fix from us on social media, from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these places, even YouTube. There's some things on there as well.
And of course, you listen to us on Podbean or iTunes, and any of these
Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
I keep saying iTunes. It's now Apple Podcasts.
They would get annoyed at you for saying that.
Sorry, Apple. And Spotify as well, which is my choice. But don't forget to leave us a rating on these things. It really helps.
It certainly spreads the word, and it gets us noticed. Over 20,000 of you have now downloaded an episode of this podcast. Phenomenal, very successful.
Thank you.
So we're chuffed. We are very chuffed about that. It inspires us to keep going and keep entertaining you. By all means, go on there, leave ratings and stuff if you like us. Let us know.
Excellent. This has been a good podcast.
It has indeed. It's something different. We'll do it again, but it's good. And here's to the year ahead.
Yes, New Year as well. Right, thank you, and goodbye.
Bye for now.